Don't know.
Monday just keeps happening.
The weekends just keep going pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then Mondays, it's weird to have to work on a Monday.
That's true. You were off the last two. Yeah.
I was off the last two.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was like, why is it? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then next Monday, I'm just going to be because it'll be 48 hours until I see you. And so
I know.
my whole day will be
vibrating with joy. I know. All right. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Good Monday
Welcome to
morning.
June the 7th.
Yes. Welcome to the 7th of June. It's morning here in the Eastern United States. Wherever you are watching this, we hope you are having a pleasant Monday. It might be Tuesday where you are. I have friends in New Zealand. It's Tuesday there already, or close enough.
Yeah, in the future.
Hello from the past.
Yeah. And if you're on the East Coast, we hear the cicadas are really terrible kind of everywhere. They're not terrible in Philly, but I was on Clubhouse with somebody this weekend and I could barely hear what they were saying because their backyard was so loud.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, they're missing Pittsburgh. We're in some I don't know why, but I'm happy about it. But my dad was telling me that the golf tournament this weekend was in Dublin, Ohio, and it was you could not hear the announcers for the cicadas.
Wow, that bad.
And I was like, I'm not going to Ohio until the cicadas are done. Yeah, we don't have any cicadas. I'm super happy about that.
No, we just have unusual heat.
It is very hot. It was very hot this weekend.
Yeah. We hit 98 on Saturday, which is unheard of for this part of June. Unheard of.
Crazy. We were just high 80s, but...
Yeah, because I was in and out of the car a lot because I had I jokingly called it my camera ready day, where I had my hair, my nails, and my eyebrows. So I was in and out of a lot of cars. And every time I had to get out of the car, I was like, this is a hate crime. Being hot is not the only thing going on in the world. In terms of empathy exercises, Dr. Erin, what do we have for this week of June the 7th?
Yes. Oh my gosh, 42 Celsius, Jay, that's nutso.
For everybody else, that's essentially 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's very, very hot. Yeah, I'd never know.
Poor Eleanor's garden is gonna fry. Oh, our video editor has a beautiful garden, and she is also in Canada. So I hope her garden's okay.
Woo, 42.
OJ.
Make some iced tea, girl.
Yeah.
Okay.
Watch some hockey.
Yeah. Empathy exercise for today is a story that came out last week. For any of you that follow sports in America, or if you don't, it's of interest. And I will read to you the headline from the BBC that covered this. Everyone did. The NFL agrees to drop race bias in concussion claims. So it appears that the NFL has been settling concussion lawsuits using race-based formula that assumes Black players have a lower level of cognitive function. So just sit with that for a hot minute. So they've been giving Black players less money because they've had less brain damage because of this racist.
Because they had less to work with? Is the argument? Oh my God. Race is entirely a social construct. It has nothing to do with biology.
Yes, true. So our empathy exercise, I think for today is just to let y'all know that race is a social construct.
Yep.
And if you are of a agreement with the NFL that Black folks have lower cognitive function, I would like to tell you that is blatantly false and racist and was used as a means to oppress and disenfranchise Black folks. And treat them poorly medically, which has been quite a history here in the United States and elsewhere. So that was the empathy exercise. A little salty, a little short about it this morning. Another reason to stop supporting the NFL. I mean, they're just not good on the racism, even though they did paint in the end zone of the Kansas City Chiefs stadium, end racism.
I mean, every institution is problematic.
Yes, correct.
The NFL is its own breed because of this blend of a fetishization of tradition.
Yeah.
A very specific form of masculinity, which ranges from specific to toxic, depending on where we are.
Mm.
And then the fact that Roger Goodell just is himself. So it's really, we practice no judgment here for people's personal choices. There's lots of people that we love that still watch American football. And if it is your joy, it is your joy. Please know that the NFL is a dumpster fire while you are watching the game. And we all watch problematic things, says the girl who still loves The Bachelor. So, I mean, we all...
it's just, part of it is recognizing, like, the reality of the institutions we support and what you can do about it. You can, even if you are an NFL supporter and you enjoy the sport very much so, you have a lot of leverage and power to advocate for change within the organization.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to racist policies, racist team names, treatment of players, domestic, intimate partner violence and domestic abuse is a huge problem.
What we pay the cheerleaders / don't pay them.
Exactly. So there's lots of issues that as a fan, you can leverage your fandom and the money that comes with it to enact change. So we encourage you to, whether you are a supporter or not, look up what's going on with your team or your league or your institution that you support, like The Bachelor, and use your voice accordingly.
Speaking of franchises we support, no, I can't go there. So anyway, there's lots of problematic stuff. I'm writing down the timestamp for the replay crew. Hello, replay crew.
Friends, friendly replay crew. We know we do this while people are working. And one of our fantastic replay crew members, Amy G, rewatched our Handmaid's Tale live from last week. So shout out to Amy if you watch this. She was working last Friday at 3, but she watched the replay and commented anyway. So thanks for that, friend.
And I know Angie and Tara, our friends, often watch the replay on Facebook later on in the day. So hello to everybody who's part of the replay crew.
Woo-hoo.
So we are 7 days into Pride Month, and there's going to be lots of coverage around our channel. Last Friday's newsletter, if you're not on our newsletter, please subscribe. There's a lot of goodies going out every week. Mm-hmm. Eventually there will be exclusive announcements and discounts that go on there, so you definitely don't want to miss that. We talked about the history of Pride and the understanding of exactly kind of where Stonewall is situated in the history of queer movements and resistances. Mm-hmm. We're also covering an incredible Hulu documentary series right now, Hulu and FX documentary series right now called Pride. We've got the Colonizers World Tour is looking at global queer stories at the moment. We're kind of all over the place, but we wanted to take today's live and talk about the particular LGBTQIA plus, or queer as I usually just shorten it, art that we enjoy, and we'd love to get recommendations from you as well. So Dr. Erin, what is one of the first ones you normally recommend? Let's start with movies. What is a movie you normally recommend?
Girl, you know where I'm going with
I know where you're going. I know.
Set me up for that and I will hit this ball for you. Yes, probably the movie we recommend like most frequently, and I mean we collectively, the two of us, is the movie Pride, which I think is 2014, 2015, around pretty recently, and is the story of the Welsh miners' strike and the UK miners' strike. Was a pretty big strike in 1985, and the founding of the Lesbians and Gays Support the Miners organization in London, and a journey of a group of lesbians and gays to a small town in Wales to help raise support and awareness for the miners' strike. And it's this beautiful story of acceptance and solidarity, because they said these people are fighting for the same rights we are, and that's why this group of young queer folks formed the Lesbians and Gays Support the Minors, and they stood outside their office with like buckets and raised money for the minors, and then they raised all this money and they were like, oh, we need to give it to people, and they found a tiny town in Wales. It's where I learned how to say the only phrase I can say in a Welsh accent, which is talcum powder. If that gives you any sense of what you get from the movie, I mean, it's absolutely, Bill Nye is in it, and Bill Nye, should always be watched in just about anything.
Imelda Staunton
is fantastic.
Hot Priest from
Fleabag.
Dominic Cooper.
Dominic
West. I don't mix them up as people. I mix up their names.
I know. Yeah. A very interesting human, Dominic West. But it's fantastic. Please watch it. It's such a great, and it's based on a true story. And the true story of specifically to a young man from Northern Ireland who was involved in that movement in London and involved in the Lesbians and Gays Support the Minors. So dear to our hearts for the reference to Mark, I forget his second name, from Northern Ireland as well.
And as we're talking, by the way, please feel free to, and please, we beseech you to throw your recommendations in the chat. We are always looking for good stories.
Yeah.
So Pride is probably the number one movie I recommend all the time that not enough people have seen, for the simple fact that it is just a good movie. And Imelda Staunton in it is my joy. So
I watch it like so many times, and I'm a repeat movie watcher of like favorite movies of mine, but not necessarily new movies. But that is one I have watched 4 or 5 times easily.
Yeah.
And we watched it with our dear friend Jonathan Evershed, who is Welsh, and him crying when they all stood up in the hall singing Bread and Roses is like one of my endearing life memories.
Forever. Yeah.
So good. Yeah. How about you? Pick a different genre.
TV I'm going to go a little bit more depressing, I guess I should say, because an important part, so that you have to hold anything, like all of this, there's a lot of importance in having non-tragic queer stories.
Yeah.
And celebratory queer stories, which is one of the reasons that we always talk about Pride as a movie. But especially now, we've really lost sight of what the AIDS crisis did to the queer community, especially in the United States, and especially for gay men, the entire generation that was lost. And so for me, the 2 films that I always recommend that deal with that are And the Band Played On and Angels in America. And Angels in America is a play that became a movie that then became a play again. And it is a long sit. I'm not going to lie. It's a long sit. It's a seminal piece of American theater for a reason. And the Band Played On is the dramatization of a book that I also recommend highly and frequently, called And the Band Played On. And the dramatization stars Matthew Modine, and he does a great job in his righteous indignation. And the movie obviously takes some liberties because it's a movie. If you've got the patience for a 500-page book, it is worth every page of it to kind of understand the process of the diagnosis, the politicization of the diagnosis, the politicization of funding for the diagnosis, exactly how President Reagan behaved, the language he chose to use or chose not to use, the way that his administration interacted with the beginnings of the pandemic, because that's what it absolutely was. It is just because it is controlled now in the West, by the way, does not mean that it is not still ravaging communities around the world. And it is, it's a nasty disease. Like, it's just nasty.
Yeah.
And it does terrible things to people's bodies, lives, souls, and families. And I think, And the Band Played On does a good, for me, job of the realities of this horrible thing, but also that gay life is not entirely tragic. Like, it holds that well. So, which is some of the other like more famous, like I'd never recommend Brokeback Mountain because to me, the story of Brokeback Mountain is that gay life is tragic and lonely. and it's not something I want to recommend as a story that's out there. So anyway, any other movies from you, E?
Just while you were talking about that, I was thinking, because as I was thinking too about this live and thinking about kind of our first experiences with queer stories. And the first one I remember watching was Philadelphia, speaking of tragedy.
I think that would be my first one too, I think.
Yeah. But I just like it is almost entirely there are moments of joy and community. But I think in terms of understanding the devastation of the disease and the level of discrimination against folks who contracted it,
Philadelphia is a great one. Yeah,
it's a great one for that. And like it stuck with me, and it's not one of those ones. Yeah, Jay says she had forgotten that. That's an old school 90s. There was a lot of 90s queer tragedy stories. So hopefully we can move beyond and expand that storytelling. But yeah, for me, that one was a huge empathy builder for like my 13-year-old mind or 12-year-old mind or whatever. What else you got? How about books? You read way more books than I do about everything. So I can't really contribute to the book conversation, but I know you have some recommendations.
I mean, one of the ones that I will kind of always recommend in terms of a trans story is Janet Mock's, which is a great one, and really unpacks a lot of the myths of trans women and the myths of what they're doing and kind of what they're thinking. We have a recommendation up this week for a book. Actually, let me grab it for you.
Hey, right there.
This one, which is a graphic history. So it's not like a graphic novel, which is kind of what I thought it was. It is like gender and sexuality theory illustrated.
Ooh.
So if you're looking at like, hey, I don't really understand what, doing gender means. I've heard Judith Butler bandied about, but I don't really understand it. This is a great pickup for that. And for me, because of that, it's a good shelf book. Like it's not one you sit down and necessarily read, but it's a real good shelf book. I love how they're also very clear about the range of emotions around pride within the community and everything else. So this is one that I definitely recommend. And then I love reading these days YA books about the coming out process and the emotions around it. And one of the ones I recommend all the time is Darius the Great is Not Okay, which is just a beautiful, beautiful story of acceptance, of self-acceptance and self-discovery and the integration of conservative religion internally and kind of everything else with who you want to be and how you want to live love and what love feels like in your body. I really, really love that one. I could go on honestly about books for far too long. So, but I want to come back to something that Taylor just very generously commented.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw it up here on the screen. There are absolutely, he says, as a gay man, I recognize that there are tough, sad moments in gay people's lives, but being gay is not all tragedy. So I like when media expands on the joy of being gay and the gay community. Agreed. We do too. We do too. All of my gay friends, their lives just look like lives to me. They don't They don't look like a Shakespearean tragedy play. So I really love it when, as a straight person, I love seeing life, and I appreciate when it's there.
I think that's hopefully where we're going with LGBTQIA plus all those stories. The stories of humanity is that it's all messy. It's like I think it's a hard line to walk because so often with marginalized folks, wherever you are marginalized in that intersection at around the world, marginalization leads to oppression, lack of resources, all of those things. And it's important to highlight oppression and discrimination so that we can learn from it. But I think it's often done at the expense of showing that marginalized and oppressed people live lives and experience joy and find community and all that other stuff. So hopefully we're striking a better balance of highlighting what needs to be highlighted so that we can rectify, make amends, change course, while also just letting people tell stories of their lives. Wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't it be? Yeah, like one of the best explorations of what it means to be asexual for me is a YA book that just came out. Which the name is escaping me right now. It is a purple cover. That helps you guys so much. It's like what's about love or something like that. I will link it in the show notes. But it's
so many books, you guys.
It's I think I just read my 200th for the year this weekend.
It's June, everybody. Raise your hand if you are also on your 200th book for June.
Dr. Kristen, brag. I'm a weirdo.
You're not weird. Stop it.
I think it's literally called like Let's Talk About Love or something. I'm going to Google it. But
we all have
asexuality is something that is often mocked.
Yeah.
And people are told that it means they're broken or that they're just not ready for dating. Like, no, asexuality is valid and also wide and messy for folks, and the boundaries around it are different. And I appreciate that there are ace folks who have said this book is perfect, and there are ace folks that have said this book is shit. And I like that we're also, as we expand storytelling, we're allowing space for those too. We're like, yes, this is completely the experience of my sexuality, or no, this doesn't represent me at all.
Yeah.
And I love that we're kind of maybe as we continue to expand, allowing that. So in terms of television shows, for my money, it's Schitt's Creek.
Oh boy.
Forever and ever. Amen.
I don't how can you talk about anything else? I will say, I was thinking this morning,
Pose as well, I should say, for other facets of queer life.
I haven't watched Pose yet, but I want to. It's on my list. I had a shower thought this morning. You guys don't know this, but I often have thoughts in the shower that then I tell Dr. Kristen about. But my shower thought this morning was that randomly the show Shadowhunters on the CW did a pretty good job of, and the books, they're based on a series of books by Cassandra Clare, where she really encapsulates kind of the diverse spectrum of humanity. They're fantasy books, so there's angels and demons and stuff like that too. But I think anything that demonstrates or shows that, sexuality and gender is a spectrum, not a binary, and that you can fall anywhere on that spectrum and get to define that for yourself. So I think Schitt's Creek is so great because of that. Dr. Kristen has found the books while I was talking and put them into the chat here so you guys can find them. Let's Talk About Love was the book she was describing. But I think, Schitt's Creek is that example of just humans living lives and creating a world. And Dan Levy has said specifically he wanted to create a world where homophobia didn't exist.
Yeah.
And he set those rules and the whole show followed it. And I binge watched it twice last year. It's one of the best things ever made in the history of art, but certainly in terms of queer stories as well. But yeah, anything that showcases the spectrum and allows people to define who they are. And hopefully we start to see shows that aren't just necessarily about queer folks, but just have humans on them that may be queer and may not be, or, whatever, and just living life instead of specifically, it's that balance I said, right? We do need to make sure we tell those stories because they haven't been represented in a way that is empathetic and joyful and diverse. But hopefully we can get to a place where we can just tell stories of folks. I don't know.
We should also say, like, there's maybe people watching this are like, when are they going to mention Glee? So we are not Ryan Murphy fans for a host of reasons, but we do want to acknowledge that the power that Glee gave him was in telling the stories that he wanted to tell, and many of those are queer stories.
Yeah.
And there are, I think when I talk to friends of mine who are lesbians, Brittany and Santana is still a very evocative story for them, and something the first time they feel they saw themselves on screen. So there's a lot of mess in his media.
Yes.
But when he does represent the wide array of humans, we want to acknowledge that. I will never classify anything he's done as something that is favorite or something I can personally recommend for a host of reasons. But I do want to acknowledge that specifically because while there is increasing potentially gay representation on television, the lesbian representation, bisexual representation, for that I would like to shout out Rosa Diaz on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which has been handled very well.
Have you watched The L Word? I never watched The L Word.
I watched The L Word,
okay.
But years after it came on, like I watched it when you could get discs of it from Netflix.
Aging ourselves there.
Yeah. And what the narrative that I hear from folks that are lesbians is that it's a very specific pocket of lesbian history, in the same way that I would say Sex and the City is a very specific pocket of feminism. So that there was an era where the most important thing in feminism was to have Manola Blahniks, and I'm glad we're out of that era. But I think the new Gossip Girl is going to have a lot more sexuality and gender inclusivity than the first one did. Yeah. I mean, you can sneeze and have more inclusivity in the second Gossip Girl.
That's a low bar. That is a low bar. Bless.
So, you know, I hope we should say ABC Family, which is now Freeform, their shows have always been more inclusive than a lot of other shows. CW is the same way. Whether they're doing it well or not is a conversation we may not be versed in because we don't watch that media sometimes, but it exists. And the more something exists, the kind of better it is. So any other media, specific media, theater.
Hello.
We have to acknowledge Rent.
We do. The Rent of it all. That was probably Philadelphia was the first thing I remember watching, but I do remember being taken to see Rent when it was on its national tour.
Okay.
I used to know all the words to Rent.
I don't remember a time in my life before Rent. Like I know there was, but it became not Rent. Yeah, I don't love it. Like Taylor, I don't love it. I am not a Rent stan. I am somebody who believes that we would not love it as much if Jonathan Larson had lived. That there's something, but it is for a lot of, when I talk to folks who did not grow up in areas with accessible gay communities, some of the lines in that movie or that musical were the first time that they ever, saw a representation of a trans person or saw a representation of a queer person at all on stage. And so that is still at a very seminal moment in some people's lives, very important. I don't like Rent. Unpopular opinion.
It's one of those that for me has not aged well. I liked it when I was 16 and I didn't know anything else.
Yeah, and I think that's another piece of this, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that teaches us that isn't great, but we didn't know anything else. And so this is another lesson to learn with media. Nothing should be the only story about something that you know. Yeah. Because nothing is a good representation. A holistic representation. Nothing is a holistic representation in one piece of media. So we're not Rent stands here.
Any other theater recs you have, Doctor?
I would love to recommend Fun Home, which is a musical based on a graphic novel by a woman named Alison Bechdel, who you may have heard of by the Bechdel test, which is absolutely wonderful. Fun Home is a searing musical. This is not Rodgers and Hammerstein's. There are no hoedowns. But Fun Home is Allison's biography. And it is about her life as a queer person and coming out and her closeted father and what that kind of looked like and everything else. So that one's very one that I always recommend as another story. If Fun Home is coming near you, then yeah. In terms of gender fluid sexuality, anything Billy Porter is in ever. And also the new Moulin Rouge does a lot of interesting things with gender performance on stage that I hope they continue when they reopen. And yeah, that I hope they continue when they reopen. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's others, and there's others that are interesting to queer bend or gender bend or sexuality bend as people kind of go forward. We're doing a lot of gender bending with Shakespeare, which is exciting, and kind of seeing what that can look like. And then there's obviously a long history in theater of men playing women. And that's not an intentional gender thing. That's to do with bizarre purity laws that happened at the time. But they're gender bending a character and then letting the character be the gender of the person that's presenting as, if that's a clumsy way to say it. But so if they're having a man play a female role, they're having that role be male, for instance. So that's interesting. I think theater is the living embodiment of stories, and we can tell as many of them as there are humans. So I love that. Yeah. I think those are kind of, Fun Home is one that no one has ever heard of. Right. Color Purple also plays with sexuality for sure, and that's one that's worth everyone's time. But because the main character in Color Purple is a lesbian.
Alphabet City? Is that one? No?
Avenue Q?
Avenue Q.
Avenue Q doesn't really play with queer as much as it does. There is a song in it. Avenue Q has another thing that has not aged well. Avenue Q is very, very much 2006.
Oh, okay.
2003 when it was really written.
Gotcha.
This song is I Have a Girlfriend That Lives in Canada.
Oh, okay.
And he has a crush on his straight roommate.
Got it.
So it exists, but I wouldn't say it does it for laughs in a way that I think a lot of folks now would not love.
Gotcha. I just didn't even know in my head, because I know they have that song, Everybody's a Little Bit Racist. I didn't know.
Yeah, there's some gems in it, but it is also, it'll be, if it ever comes back, it'll stay off Broadway.
Good stuff. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't know literally any other theater, so I can't contribute to that.
I would live to see the day where we see a gender bent Cinderella. That would make me unspeakably happy. So happy.
Oh. Come on, folks. We can do it. We can make a new world.
And in terms of queer media, I'd need to shout out fandom just really briefly, because very famously, nearly every fandom there is, Harry Potter would be one of the most easily examples. For instance, the relationship that the most media is produced about in Harry Potter is Harry and Draco.
Harry and Draco.
Because one of the things that fandom does is the marginalized folks that don't see themselves within the traditional is the wrong word, the commercialized version of the fandom, they create their own space within it. So this is where you get lots of stories about, Harry being bi, or, Hermione being ace, or, there's lots of stories within Twilight as well, queering Twilight, although less so because that was a specific fandom. I've talked openly about being in Marvel. There's a lot of queer content in Marvel, and lots of content creators that may not identify as queer, but still create queer content because they like to be able to offer those dreams and those stories for other people. So it's all about fandom. Transformative works are all about playing in the margins. And so much of Tumblr is just queer content. Tumblr is just lousy with queer content in beautiful, beautiful, beautiful ways. So those are kind of the 4 categories of media that I consume. 5 categories: books, music, movies, theater. Not music, sorry. Books, TV, theater, fandom. So that we can go. There's lots of music out there now. Obviously, Lil Nas is doing some really cool, fun stuff.
Yeah, and I think even too, just came to my mind, Harry Styles is really challenging so many gender and sexuality norms, and just like skyrocketing to success, dressing how he wants to dress, really comfortable and open with where he falls on spectrums. And like, you know, it's the power that he wields as a white presenting man to be able to challenge that, whereas people who don't present in a more commercialized, shall we say, to use your parlance, appearance don't get the same leverage that people like Harry Styles do. But hopefully he can, you know, hold that door open and pull some other folks up.
He certainly seems to have that vibe that that's what he wants to do. So
yeah,
hopefully he follows through. Well, folks, that's us from today. We could keep going, but I think this is a good button on some stuff that we've talked about. So if you've got content that falls anywhere within the rainbow spectrum, we always want to know. We are both Queer Eye watchers. We didn't mention that, but we love Queer Eye, the second incarnation more than the first. And we love Jonathan Van Ness and their presentation. We are super excited that people like Demi Lovato and are embracing different pronouns and non-binary life and what that looks like. And all of these things are, to us, just expanding humanity. And we're excited about it. So if you've got comments, please don't forget to leave them whenever we see you. This is going up, obviously, on Monday. The rest of this week is all content about... It's a lot of content about global queer life. So we'll be talking about queer life in Japan this week. We'll be talking about the international picture of sexuality laws around the world. So we have kind of a snapshot of what things look like. We'll be talking about the 1960s in the Hulu documentary. And we've got some themed book reviews and Welcome to My World videos coming your way as well.
Whew, a whole host of content. Make sure if you like it to tell the algorithm. It helps. Comment below. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. If you want to catch up on our newsletter, sign up. You know where to find us. We will be there. And we will see you guys for whatever you join us for next.
Bye.
Bye.